Chapter 446. Also, many aristocratic families in the imperial city seem to have submitted to the third prince. That person continued stuttering. Emperor Jianghu froze on the spot as if he was struck by lightning. What do you mean? That person boldly looked up and scanned the surroundings before quickly looking down. Those aristocratic families' heads seemed to have discussed this with the third prince. After the rebel army entered the imperial city, they didn't meet with any obstructions. Actually, Emperor Jianghu understood the meaning of this the moment he heard this. However, he felt that it was too ridiculous. As a result, he subconsciously didn't dare to believe it. There was dead silence in the palace. Emperor Jianghu's vision turned black. How is that possible? I single-handedly supported all these aristocratic families. I definitely won't. Halfway through his sentence, he suddenly thought of something and suddenly looked at the crowd standing in the palace. Someone among you has long betrayed me? One had to know that most of the aristocratic families' heads in the imperial city were standing here. If Wuxia brought the soldiers in without any obstructions, it meant that someone had instructed him to do so. What responded to him was even scarier silence. It's you? Or all of you? Emperor Jianghu didn't expect the situation to change so drastically. No wonder Wuxia was so presumptuous. It turned out that he was fully prepared. So many people secretly betrayed him, but he didn't know at all. Who exactly is it? Emperor Jianghu suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. Your Majesty, calm down first. I guarantee with my life that the Xi family didn't betray you. Xi stepped forward and said solemnly. Previously, when Wuxia escaped from the execution ground, he couldn't find him for a long time. When he heard that Wuxia had successfully reached the city gates, he returned to the palace to ask for forgiveness. He didn't expect things to become like this in such a short time. Your Majesty, the same goes for the Chu family. Chu Shao hurriedly said to express his loyalty. Ever since he was harshly scolded in the imperial study, Chu Shao never came again. Today, he finally had the chance, so he naturally had to suck up to the emperor. Then, a few people spoke up one after another. However, the Gu family and the Lu family of the four major families didn't say anything. Emperor Jianghu was so angry that his entire body trembled. Did the remaining people who didn't say anything already submit to that bastard? Suddenly, a familiar voice sounded from outside the hall. Imperial Father, haven't you already seen the situation clearly? Why bother to get to the bottom of this? It would only make his face even uglier. Emperor Jianghu suddenly looked up and saw a team of soldiers rapidly approaching the palace. Then they separated into two sides. A murderous figure walked out from within. It was Wuxia. Not long ago, he was still dressed in prison clothes, battered and exhausted, waiting for the guillotine to fall. But now, he was clad in armor, leading his soldiers in an aggressive manner. Finally, he stood outside the main hall. He looked at Emperor Jianghu fixedly. Imperial Father, how have you been? Fear finally surfaced in Emperor Jianghu's heart. Men, protect the emperor. Chu Shao immediately led the others and rushed forward. But before she could stabilize herself, she heard Wuxia lightly say, Don't worry. I do not wish to implicate the innocent. As long as you surrender now, I guarantee that I will not touch your family members. Chu Shao immediately shouted loudly, Let's go. This is treason. It was a serious crime. His Majesty is the only emperor. Wuxia, you're only digging your own grave by doing this. Oh? Really? Wuxia raised the padao in his hands and slowly wiped away the bloodstain on it. First Elder Chu, you probably don't know that the entire imperial city is under I's control, right? Chu Zhao's heart skipped a beat as he looked at Wuxia and felt uneasy. Could it be that Wuxia will really win this time? At the side, Xi coldly said, Wuxia, you killed the empress and want to rebel now. You deserve to be killed. As he spoke, his body's force surged, and he planned to take action. Wuxia chuckled. I do hate the empress, but the one who killed her is someone else. Xi was dazed. You're lying. His Majesty said it himself, and he had also investigated in private. The guards outside the Empress's palace that day all pointed to Rongjio killing the Empress. How could someone else do it? I have already brought the soldiers here. What's there to lie about? Rongjio looked at Siyi sarcastically. You should ask father about the truth of the matter. Siyi was dazed. Rongjio does make sense. He even started a rebellion, so why wouldn't he admit to killing the Empress? Unless he really didn't do it. Siyi stiffened his neck and turned to look at Emperor Juan. Emperor Juan harshly said, Elder Yi. Where's Elder Yi? Such a big thing happened in the palace, but Elder Yi still hasn't appeared. At this point, Emperor Juan didn't know that Elder Yi, who had been guarding Elder Zhongyi, had also met with some trouble. Seeing that there was no hope of saving Elder Yi, Emperor Juan thought of something. Deep Xian Formation? The Deep Xian Formation was country Yao Chen's palace's defense formation, but he just remembered that the Deep Xian Formation wasn't activated when Rongjio and the rest barged in. Rongjio said, Oh right. Oh that's right. I forgot to tell you that the Deep Xian Formation is also under my control. If you want to take a look, I'll personally send you there. How about that? Emperor Jiawen felt like he had fallen into an ice hole. Then he was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood. Chu Xiao, who was standing at the side, had a few drops of blood on him. He wanted to reach out to help him up, but when he thought of what Rongjio said previously, he suddenly felt afraid and took a step back. How could the others not understand at this point? They naturally avoided him. Emperor Jiawen's hands trembled as he pointed at Rongjio. Why? Rongjio lifted his chin, and his expression was cold. It seems like father's body isn't too good. You should rest properly. As he spoke, he raised his hand. Someone come and send father to Qinghe Palace to rest. Emperor Jiawen immediately shouted. How dare you? Rongjio clearly wants to imprison me. He clenched his teeth. Rongjio, don't think that I can't do anything to you. Before he could finish his sentence, a huge commotion came from outside. A cold and gloomy aura quickly spread out. Emperor Jiawen suddenly looked up. In that direction, is where Situ Xingqian is being locked up. The most important thing is that this aura, someone touched the bronze cauldron. He didn't even think about it and immediately rushed outside. But before he could take 2 steps, he was stopped by someone. Emperor Jiawen's face flushed red. Let me go over. Rongjio, do you know what that is? Let me go over immediately. If not, you'll definitely regret it. The moment he finished his sentence, a greenish-red pillar of light shot up to the sky. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 447. Dark clouds rumbled, and heaven and earth darkened. That light pillar went straight for the sky and into the clouds. From afar, it looked like it connected heaven and earth. On top of it, the green and red lights intertwined, forming a strange pattern that made one fearful. Rongjio turned around to take a look, and he looked serious. Wei Lin, immediately send someone to check. What exactly is going on? Everyone in the hall also looked over with different expressions. Taking advantage of this short gap, Emperor Jiawen suddenly turned around and rushed back. I must be quick. But Rongjio quickly detected this movement and turned around to look coldly. What are you all waiting for? The people at the side immediately reacted and rushed forward to stop Emperor Jiawen again. This time, Emperor Jiawen's hands were tied up and he couldn't move. Rongjio! Rongjio! Emperor Jiawen was furious, and his face flushed red. Rongjio waved his hands. Aren't you going to send father to rest? A few soldiers immediately walked over and escorted Emperor Jiawen away. Eunuch Min and a few other servants who served him were also taken away. At the start, Emperor Jiawen was still scolding Rongjio. But when his figure disappeared through the side door, his voice suddenly disappeared, leaving only faint sounds of struggling as if his mouth was stuffed. The crowd looked at one another. At this point, it was clear who had won and who had lost. Emperor Jiawen, who was high and mighty a moment ago, was locked up in the blink of an eye. Even though Rongjio didn't directly kill him, Emperor Jiawen's future days wouldn't be good. The entire palace was so quiet that it was suffocating. Rongjio's gaze swept across the crowd and stopped on Siyi for a moment. Siyi's entire body tensed up. Even though the Si family was the head of the 4 major families, it clearly wasn't a wise move to go against the current Rongjio. Si family head, I'll have to trouble you to accompany father during this period of time. Siyi's heart sank. Is Rongjio planning to put me under house arrest? Third prince. Before Siyi could finish his sentence, Rongjio nonchalantly interrupted him and slowly said, "You're not the only one. Don't worry, as long as you take good care of father, I will naturally take good care of everyone in the Si family." This was a blatant threat. Siyi's heart surged with anger, but he suppressed it in the end and said word by word, "Since that's the case, I'll have to trouble your highness." Then he turned around and walked in the direction that Emperor Jiawen left in. Several officers and soldiers followed closely behind. Everyone exchanged glances privately. It seems like Rongjio still has a grudge against the empress. Besides, Siyi was the one who sent Rongjio to the execution ground. The Si family's situation naturally wouldn't be any better. Seeing that Emperor Jiawen and Siyi had already been dealt with, Chu Shao was filled with regret. If he had known earlier, he definitely wouldn't have stood out. Now, Rongjio will definitely remember this in his heart. As expected, Rongjio's gaze landed on him. "Great Elder Chu." Chu Shao shuddered as he looked at Rongjio fearfully. Third Highness, you're very loyal to father. But aren't you going together?" Chu Zhao's legs turned to jelly, and he immediately said, "Your Highness, you're mistaken. Actually, just now." Rongjio's gaze was filled with unconcealed mockery. Chu Zhao's heart skipped a beat, and he seemed to be choking on something. His face flushed red and white, and he wanted to defend himself again. However, under such a mocking gaze, he seemed to be a joke. "Great Elder Chu, please." The soldier at the side had already spoken first. Sensing their terrifying murderous intent, Chu Shao clenched and loosened his fists. In the end, he could only leave with them. Then, the other people who previously stood on Emperor Jiawen's side were brought away. After a short silence, someone mustered his courage and spoke. "Congratulations, Hong Long." Before he could say anything to curry favor, another loud sound came from the sky. Rongjio took a deep breath in, turned around and looked over. Wei Lin had already returned. Rongjio asked, "Where did that light pillar come from?" Wei Lin's expression was very solemn. "Your Highness, it seems to have come from Taiyuan Palace." Rongjio knitted his brows. "Hasn't nobody been living there since a long time ago? Have you found out who caused such a commotion there?" Wei Lin paused before saying, "Your Highness. Your Highness, I'm useless. The outside of Taiyuan Palace is covered by a barrier. Outsiders can't get close to it, and they can't see the situation inside. I tried to enter 3 times, but I didn't succeed." Rongjio was slightly shocked. Wei Lin is a stage 5 warrior, and he's very capable. If even he can't break the barrier, bring I there. When the light pillars shot up to the sky, Elder Yi and Elder Zhongyi, who were in a stalemate, also felt the strong ripple in another hidden dungeon in the palace. Upon hearing the loud sound, the 2 of them were stunned. There aren't many people in the entire country Yaochen who can cause such a commotion. Also, it sounds like it's not far from the palace. The 2 of them held their breaths and focused as they felt the sinister ripple. Suddenly, Elder Yi was shocked. The commotion seems to be coming from where Situ Xingqian is locked up. Most importantly, this aura. Elder Yi had a terrifying and absurd conjecture in his heart. Then he turned around and quickly left. Elder Zhongyi was stunned. Yi Zhiding actually left just like that? What exactly is so urgent that he actually gave up on guarding me? Thinking of this, Elder Zhongyi quickly broke free from the cage and followed him. The moment Elder Yi came out, he was stunned by the huge light pillar that connected heaven and earth. He froze on the spot and didn't recover his senses for a long time. Indeed. Someone still touched the bronze cauldron. Elder Zhongyi, who quickly rushed out, was also shocked when he saw this scene. However, he was more confused. Yi Zhiding is considered someone who has seen many big scenes. What exactly is it that can make him reveal such an expression? However, this question didn't linger in his heart for long. To him, the most important thing now was to find Situ Xingqian and bring her away. Even though the bracelet was destroyed, he was very familiar with Situ Xingqian's aura. As long as she was still in the palace, he could still find her quickly. Thinking of this, Elder Zhongyi closed his eyes and searched carefully. After a moment, he opened his eyes, and deep shock flashed across his eyes. Situ Xingqian seems to be at the spot where the light pillar came from. On the other end, Chu Luiyue and Jian Fengqi also entered the palace amidst the chaos when Rong Jiu led the soldiers into the palace. Luckily, everyone's attention was on Rong Jiu and the rest. In addition, the duo was good at hiding their figures, so their journey was smooth. Until they saw the terrifying light pillar. Jian Fengqi knitted his brows. What's that? It's so eerie. Chu Luiyue didn't have any expression on his face. I'm still a step too late. What? Jian Fengqi was about to ask again when a figure suddenly rushed out of the light pillar. Digression. Trash computer, ruining my time and slowing me down. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 448. Under the light, that person's figure was a little blurry, but Chu Luiyue still recognized her. That person was Situ Xingqian. When she flew to the middle of the light pillar, she finally stopped. Then, the surrounding heaven and earth force crazily surged into her body. A few energy whirlpools rapidly appeared around her. Even the pattern on the pillar of light seemed to distort. Chu Luiyue stared at Situ Xingqian's figure closely. As the energy surged in, her aura kept strengthening. What's going on? Jian Fengqi muttered and nudged Chu Luiyue with his elbow. Hey, do you know what she's doing? You were referring to this when you said you were one step too late? Chu Luiyue didn't say anything, but many thoughts surfaced in his mind. That bronze cauldron must be with Situ Xingqian. And it's obvious that she's already activated it. She used the energy inside. She was just a stage 3 warrior previously, but not long after, she's about to break through to stage 4. I have to think of a way to stop her. Jian Fengqi stared at it a few more times and knitted his brows. This thing is a little strange. Don't you sense a bloody smell? Chu Luiyue coldly said, the bronze cauldron contains the blood of the bronze cauldron. The bronze cauldron contains the power and blood essence of several hundred cultivators. It's not strange for it to smell like this. Jian Fengqi's expression changed. He was a celestial physician and had killed and saved countless people. But when he heard Chu Luiyue's words, he still felt disgusted. As long as he used his brain to think, he would know what kind of scene it would be. It turns out that the bronze cauldron is such an evil item. In that case, the energy in this light pillar was actually snatched from those people? But the energy accumulated through such means is mottled and messy, and it might even conflict with each other. Once one absorbs this energy, even though it can raise one's cultivation level in the short term, it will greatly affect one's future cultivation. Who's so brainless to do such a thing? He naturally didn't recognize Situ Xingqian. Chu Luiyue pursed her lips tightly. How could Situ Xingqian not know what Jian Fengqi said? But she still chose to do it. Suddenly, Chu Luiyue sensed a strange fluctuation coming from the Jianghu bag. She carefully examined it and discovered that the commotion actually came from a wooden box. That wooden box happened to be the one I got from Situ Xingqian. Chu Luiyue looked up again and frowned. The movement of the wooden box seemed to have been caused by the light pillar. Inside the wooden box was a roll of parchment. There was a layer of seal on it, and even now, she had not been able to break it. Previously, she had thought of many ways to open it, but none of them succeeded, so she put it aside for the time being. Who would have thought that it was related to the bronze cauldron? In midair, Situ Xingqian was still rapidly absorbing the surrounding energy, and her aura was clearly becoming stronger. Following this change, Chu Luiyue clearly felt that the movement in the wooden box was gradually expanding. Jian Fengqi then realized that Chu Luiyue's expression was amiss. What's wrong with you? Chu Luiyue shook her head. From what Emperor Jiawen said previously, she could guess that the Empress specially prepared the bronze cauldron for Rong Jin to help him improve his cultivation level. She vaguely guessed that Emperor Jiawen knew something, but she didn't say it. She originally planned to carefully check the item after finding it, but she was one step too late as Situ Xingqian beat her to it. Once it's opened, the energy in the bronze cauldron will definitely be absorbed and turned into Situ Xingqian's energy. But now, it seems like things are more troublesome than expected. What are you looking at? Hurry up and leave. Suddenly, an impatient scolding came from the side. Chu Luwe quickly turned around and saw a group of people walking over. Her figure moved, and she quickly hid in the corner at the side. Upon seeing this, Jian Fengqi also hid. The group of people walked closer and closer. Chu Luwe then clearly saw that the person being scolded in the middle was actually Emperor Jiawen. Behind him were Eunuch Min and the others, and they all seemed to have suffered. He was surrounded by soldiers in red armor. They were Rong Jio's men. Emperor Jiawen had already changed out of his dragon robe, and he looked a little disheveled. If one didn't look closely, one wouldn't be able to recognize him. He looked anxious as he kept turning his head to look at the green and red light pillars as if he wanted to say something. It was a pity that his mouth was sealed, so he could only make muffled sounds. He couldn't hear anything clearly. The soldiers at the side pushed and shoved him, rushing him forward. Emperor Jiawen kept struggling, until the person at the side pulled out a sword, pressed it against his waist, and hollered, "We have plenty of ways to make you obedient. Why don't you try?" Emperor Jiawen finally stopped, and despair flashed across his eyes as he stumbled forward with them. Very quickly, these people walked past Chu Luiyue and Jian Fengqi and headed in a certain direction. Chu Luiyue's eyes sparkled, and she planned to follow them. Jian Fengqi pulled her back. "Where are you going?" Chu Luiyue glanced at him from the corner of her eyes. "If you want to follow me, go ahead. If you don't want to, you can walk on your own." Jian Fengqi was stumped. Wasn't this girl always polite to him before? Why did she suddenly have such an attitude? He was about to retort when he met her clear eyes. He suddenly felt guilty and softly muttered, "Go ahead. So be it. Why are you so angry? Why is Chu Liyue's temper so bad? My status is clearly much higher than hers, but why do I feel like I'm lower than her?" Just as he was wondering if the problem was with him, Chu Luiyue had already left with those people. Jian Fengqi could only follow. Those people brought Emperor Jiawen to Qinghe Hall. Emperor Jiawen was locked in a room alone, and the others were locked at the side. The doors and windows were tightly locked, and there were people guarding every corner. Luckily, there weren't many people. Actually, Rong Jio was still wary of Emperor Jiawen, but the entire imperial city was under his control now. After enduring for so many years, he finally succeeded, and he was in a good mood, so he naturally let down his guard. In addition, Situ Xingqian's commotion distracted part of his attention. This made things convenient for Chu Luiyue. After observing for a while, she sent Dumpling out. Dumpling was small and fast, so she quickly caused a commotion and attracted the attention of two guards. Taking advantage of the time when they left to check, Chu Luiyue quickly entered the hall. Another thunderous sound was heard. Chu Luiyue turned around and saw that Situ Xingqian had actually become a Stage 4 warrior. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from iYuan. Chapter 449. However, Situ Xingqian didn't stop there. Instead, she started to absorb the surrounding heaven and earth force at an even faster speed. It was obvious that the greenish-red pillar of light contributed greatly. Chu Luiyue knitted her brows as she looked at the rumbling dark clouds in the sky and the lightning that flashed from time to time. Generally speaking, such a phenomenon would only appear when a rare treasure appeared in the world. For a cultivator to cause such a huge commotion, they had to at least break through to become a Stage 5 warrior. One had to know that when Chu Ning recovered from his old injuries and broke through to become a Stage 5 warrior, it wasn't like this at all. If this continued, Situ Xingqian would most likely continue to break through. The wooden box in the cosmic bag was also vibrating more and more. Chu Luiyue almost couldn't ignore it anymore. She even felt that there was something in the wooden box that wanted to rush out. At this point, Emperor Zhouwen heard the commotion and suddenly turned his head. Chu Luiyue immediately hid behind the study table. At this point, Emperor Zhouwen was distracted, and his remaining rationality and attention were all placed on the pillar of light outside. He didn't even notice Chu Luiyue. He slowly walked to the window, which was locked from the outside and couldn't be opened. Hence, he couldn't see the situation outside. He could only see the light reflected on the window. How can this be? How can this be? Emperor Zhouwen was dazed as he softly muttered, "Rue, I've let you down in the end." Chu Luiyue was dazed. Rue? Isn't this Consort Wan back then, Rong Xiu's birth mother? What does Emperor Zhouwen mean by saying this at this time? Also, it sounds like there's deep regret and self-blame in his voice. Rumor has it that Emperor Zhouwen only doted on Consort Wan back then, and the harem of 3,000 people couldn't compare to her. However, not long after Consort Wan gave birth to Rong Xiu, she had a huge fight with Emperor Zhouwen. She then directly moved out of the palace and went to Tianlu Academy. After staying in the academy for 2 years, she passed away. It's normal that Emperor Zhouwen can't forget her, but why did he mention her at this time? At this moment, Emperor Zhouwen removed something from his neck. Because he was facing Chu Luiyue from his side, Chu Luiyue could only see a rough outline, but could not see clearly what it was. You're still blaming me? Is it because I was wrong that I ended up like this? Emperor Zhouwen muttered softly as he looked at the item in his hands. He seemed to be smiling and crying at the same time. Shortly after, the item in his hand suddenly glowed with a faint light. Like a stream of water, it flowed along Emperor Zhouwen's arm and spread to his entire body. Very quickly, Emperor Zhouwen's entire body was enveloped in that strange light. Chu Luiyue's pupils shrank. This was because Emperor Zhouwen's aura was gradually becoming stronger. However, that power was clearly gushing out from his own body. A strange pattern suddenly appeared above his head. Chu Luiyue took a quick look and realized that the pattern was exactly the same as the pattern on the green-red light pillar outside. But in comparison, the one above Emperor Zhouwen's head looked much more normal, unlike the one outside that was filled with a strange and eerie aura. Gotcha! Suddenly, a crack appeared on the pattern. Following the crack, Emperor Zhouwen's aura became even stronger. Chu Luiyue finally realized something. There's a seal in Emperor Zhouwen's body. Now, he seems to be planning to break that seal. It's obvious that Emperor Zhouwen's abilities aren't as ordinary as they seem on the surface. Chu Luiyue suddenly thought of something, and his heart harshly skipped a beat. If the pattern that appeared above Emperor Zhouwen's head was a seal, what about the one outside? Panglong. A snake-like bolt of lightning shuttled through the thick black clouds and finally struck the light pillar. Crackle. Following this ear-piercing sound, a crack appeared in the middle of the strange pattern on the pillar of light. But as the light pillar kept flashing, and the pattern was pulled until it almost changed shape, almost nobody noticed this change. Most people's attention was on Situ Xingchen, who was in the middle of the light pillar. Rong Jiu stared at her closely. Actually, he had already recognized that person as Situ Xingchen. It seems like she has been locked up in the palace previously, but for some reason, she suddenly started to break through. The aura on the light pillar is the same as the bronze cauldron. Your Highness, what should we do? The crowd behind him exchanged glances. Should we just let it go like this? But it seems like we can't go near to stop it. Rong Jiu boomed, seal the gates. Be prepared to activate the Deep Shen formation at any time. Everyone was shocked. Your Highness, activating the Deep Shen formation requires a lot of manpower and resources. It seems a little overboard to deal with a stage 4 warrior. One of the patriarchs asked tentatively. Rong Jiu turned around and sneered. It seems like family head Su is willing to take the lead? That person's expression changed, and he hurriedly shook his head. What a joke! The aura on the light pillar is so dangerous. Even a stage 5 warrior like Wei Lin can't do anything about it, let alone the others. Since no one wants to go, immediately go down and prepare the Deep Shen formation. Rong Jiu hollered, and that person was shocked. He didn't dare to say anything else and hurriedly left. Very quickly, the people at the side also followed him. Rong Jiu looked at Situ Xingchen again and suddenly thought of something. Where's Elder Yi now? At this point, Elder Yi was fighting with Elder Zhong Yi again. After coming out, he planned to stop Situ Xingqian, but Elder Zhong Yi blocked his way. The two of them were equally skilled. Without a burden, Elder Zhong Yi's combat ability was much stronger than before. Hence, after a few moves, the two of them were still tied. Seeing that Situ Xingqian had already broken through and was planning to continue, Elder Yi became increasingly anxious. Zhong Yi, do you know what your precious niece is doing? Elder Zhong Yi sneered. Isn't it very clear what she's doing? If you want to stop this great opportunity, you'll have to get past me first. That light pillar contained immense strength, and Situ Xingqian had already successfully broken through from a stage 3 warrior to a stage 4 warrior. Not long later, she might even break through to a stage 5 warrior. Situ Xingqian was very talented as a celestial physician, but her progress as a warrior was mediocre. As long as she grasped this opportunity well, she would definitely be 100 times stronger than before. Elder Yi was enraged. This idiot actually thought that Situ Xingqian was lucky enough to obtain this opportunity. He even hoped that she would continue to break through and become a top warrior. He really can't be saved. Since that's the case, I won't stop her. Just wait here and see if she'll become a top warrior in the end. Digression, there are 2 more updates at night. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 450. Elder Zhong Yi's heart was beating like a drum. He was a rank 6 warrior and could naturally feel that something was wrong with the aura in the light pillar. Seeing Elder Yi in such a state, he became even more worried. However, since he had already said so earlier, it was naturally inappropriate for him to go back on his word. Thinking that Situ Xingqian always knew her limits, he felt more at ease and tried to defend himself. Outsiders like you don't need to worry about this. After saying that, he looked at the pillar of light. At this point, Situ Xingqian's aura had already broken through to the intermediate stage 4 stage. And it was still growing stronger. Elder Zhong Yi was half excited and half worried. However, he didn't notice that Elder Yi's eyes flashed with shock when he saw a crack appear on the pattern on the pillar of light. Situ Xingqian's breakthrough speed was faster than he expected. The power within the bronze cauldron was still gushing out. If this continued, things would only get more and more out of hand. Alright. And Emperor Jianghu. Thinking of this, Old Man Yi turned to leave. Elder Zhong Yi's eyes were sharp and his hands were nimble. He once again stood in front of him and asked with extreme vigilance, "Where are you going?" Elder Yi's eyes darkened. "Zhong Yi, I've already said that I won't stop Situ Xingqian. You better get out of the way now." However, Elder Zhong Yi did not believe him at all. Who knew what tricks Yi Zhiding would come up with to deal with him and Xingqian? "No matter what, you have to stay here. You can't go anywhere until it's over." Elder Zhong Yi sneered. "The two of us are evenly matched. Even if I can't take you down, it won't be that easy for you to leave either." Elder Yi was so angry that he almost cursed. He wanted to smash open Zhong Yi's brain to see if it was filled with water. "Zhong Yi, don't push your luck." Elder Zhong Yi shrugged. It was clear that he wanted to fight him to the end. Unlike the chaotic palace, the Prince Li's mansion was completely quiet at this moment. Rong Xiu stood in the courtyard, his hands clasped behind his back as he gazed in the direction of the palace. He raised his eyebrows when he saw the pattern on it start to crack. Umo, who was standing behind him, couldn't help but ask, "Master, it seems like Situ Xingqian's ambition is greater than expected. She actually used such a short time to break through to this stage. His limbs were crippled, his origin power sealed, and all the humiliation he's suffered in the past few days, anyone would have done the same. Not to mention her?" Rong Xiu smiled faintly. Umo thought the same. Situ Xingqian isn't a kind person. Judging from the recent events, this woman is clearly the kind of person who will do anything to achieve her goals. Not to mention that she didn't know the other secret hidden in the bronze cauldron. Even if she knew, she might still try her luck. "Third brother, what's your plan?" Rong Xiu asked calmly. Umo immediately said, "Third Highness, prepare to activate the dark mysterious formation." But for some reason, there was no movement at all. Third Imperial Brother, when you are on the battlefield, you have always been particular about knowing the enemy and yourself, and you will never be defeated. Now, he probably doesn't know what Situ Xingqian wants to do, so he's planning to wait and see. Naturally, he won't act rashly. Besides, he had just taken over the imperial city and was only one step away from the throne. He would naturally be very careful. A smile flashed across Rong Xiu's eyes. Actually, Rong Jiu is very outstanding in all aspects. There's nothing wrong with this idea. However, he didn't know that time wouldn't wait for anyone. If he wanted to wait until he was fully prepared before taking action, it might already be too late. Master, are you not planning to interfere? Asked Umo curiously. Rong Xiu squinted his eyes. Why do I have to do something unnecessary? This way, it would save him a lot of trouble. Umo respectfully answered. A ripple suddenly appeared in the air. Umo turned around and saw Yan Qing, whom he hadn't seen in a long time, walking out. He looked like he had rushed back and was covered in dust. Greetings, Master. Yan Qing knelt on one knee and presented a letter with both hands. Rong Xiu looked at the letter calmly. Master, that side can't hold on for much longer. 36 Respected Elder Feng personally wrote a letter to ask you to go back as soon as possible. Hearing 36 Respected Elder Feng, Yumo's eyelids twitched. That person actually came out personally? It can be seen that the situation over there isn't optimistic. Actually, thinking about it carefully, Master hasn't gone back in such a long time. Rong Xiu picked up the letter. The moment it touched his fingertips, the letter instantly turned into a ray of light. It flew in front of Rong Xiu. Then, the ray of light turned into a circular light screen. A blurry silhouette appeared on top of it. Your Highness, are you really not planning to come back? A low and gentle voice came from within. It was like a gentle breeze that made one feel as if they were bathed in the spring breeze. Umo suddenly shivered as he exchanged glances with Yan Qing. They both saw the fear in each other's eyes. This person actually used such a voice to speak? It's over. Rong Xiu's eyes narrowed slightly, but the corners of his lips still held a light smile. Respected Elder, you've misunderstood. I will go back in a few days. That's good. The voice was still gentle and even had a hint of a smile. That's good. Your Highness hasn't returned for a long time. Everyone thought that you died outside. Rong Xiu's eyelids twitched violently. Digression, there's another update later. Go to bed early. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 451. Umo and Yan Qing both held their breaths and didn't dare to make a sound. If they could, they really wanted to disappear from here right now. There weren't many people in the world who dared to be so rude to His Highness, and this person was one of them. However, he had never said such words in the past. It could be seen that he was furious this time. Rong Xiu coughed. Respected Elder, you're joking. It's good that Your Highness knows. That voice sounded a little fierce, but Yan Qing and Umo both heaved a sigh of relief. In this case, they could at least muddle through, right? I heard that Your Highness stayed there for so long this time because of a woman? Rong Xiu's brows moved slightly, and he glanced at Yan Qing from the corner of his eyes. Yan Qing opened her mouth. It wasn't Yan Qing who said it. That elder sneered. It's just this old man's guess. However, it seems that I guessed it right? Rong Xiu paused for a moment and nodded lightly. That's right. 36 Respected Elder Ming was caught off guard by his frank admission. Your Highness has never been close to women. Why did you suddenly become enlightened after going out? The anger from before disappeared and was replaced by curiosity and ridicule. I wonder what kind of woman can make Your Highness like this? It seems that those old fellows still don't know about this? Rong Xiu said honestly. I haven't returned yet, so it's not appropriate to make it public now. When I return, I will naturally mention this matter personally. These words made the elder in the light screen silent for a while. Your Highness intends to give her a status? Rong Xiu smiled. She's Ai's wife. Naturally, she has to have a status. What? That elder was shocked and lost his voice. Even the originally blurry figure trembled. Your Highness intends to, but she probably hasn't even entered heaven's canopy before, right? How could those old fellows agree to a woman with such a background? Rong Xiu's smile deepened. Didn't you agree just like that? This old man is... How can that group of people be compared to this old man? The old man said angrily. Is your Highness looking down on this old man? Since that woman was chosen by your Highness, this old man naturally trusts her. Moreover, the person who could make His Highness put in so much effort must be someone that His Highness had in mind. Why would this old man object? No wonder His Highness took so long to come back. However, since you were prepared, why did you take so long? At the end of his sentence, the old man's tone was filled with disdain. Rong Xiu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Don't worry, I know what to do. I'll be back in a few days. If anything happens over there, please take care of it for the time being. The old man smacked his lips twice. This old man has always been impatient with such things. This time, for the sake of His Highness's marriage, I'll just agree. However, when His Highness returns, this old man wants to be the first to see that woman. A glimmer flashed across Rong Xiu's deep eyes. I'm afraid you'll have to wait for a while. This time, she won't be returning with What? She won't be coming back with you? The old man was shocked. He was already thinking of what gift to give her. Why did he say that she wouldn't be coming? Wait, don't tell me she hasn't taken a liking to you? Rong Xiu, Yan Qing and Yu Mo both shrunk their necks and wished they could find a hole to hide in. They really didn't want to hear this conversation at all. Rong Xiu took a deep breath. You don't have to worry about this. She'll be returning to heaven's canopy soon and has some matters to attend to. When she's done, you'll naturally have a chance to see her. The old man's interest was immediately piqued. She came to heaven's canopy but didn't come with you? Then where did she go? What did she do? Rong Xiu refused to say more. You'll know all this when it's time. Seeing that Rong Xiu wasn't willing to reveal anything, the old man didn't continue asking. Since this is the case, I hope you'll return soon. After saying that, the light screen quickly dissipated. Rong Xiu lightly sighed. This time, it had indeed dragged on for too long. Even 36 respected Elder Ming personally wrote a letter. He thought for a moment and asked, What's the matter? What's Mu Qinghe up to today? Yu Mo immediately said, Earlier, he went to Ms. Lu Yu's place and left. Rong Xiu's expression turned serious. At this time, Mu Qinghe went to find her. Where is he now? Yu Mo was dazed and his expression suddenly changed. According to the previous rules, the people sent to monitor Mu Qinghe had to report to him every once in a while. However, there didn't seem to be any news today. I've been by Rong Xiu's side and only cared about Rong Jiu's matters, so I actually forgot about this. Yu Mo knelt down with a thud. I've neglected my duty. Master, please punish me. Rong Xiu had long realized something when he saw Yu Mo's expression. He knitted his brows. No need. It seems like he left today. Mu Qinghe isn't a simple person. It's impossible for him not to know that someone is secretly monitoring him. There must be a reason why he took action today. Also, where's Yu? Asked Rong Xiu immediately. Yu Mo's heart skipped a beat. Rong Xiu closed his eyes. After a moment, he opened them and looked in a certain direction. That's where the palace is. She actually entered the palace. He looked at the light pillar that connected the heavens and the earth. As time passed, the light pillar's color seemed to have faded a lot. However, Situ Xingqian's aura was much stronger than before. The most important thing was that many cracks had already appeared on the strange pattern on the light pillar. Rong Xiu's eyes darkened. The next moment, another bolt of lightning struck down. That pattern was finally completely torn apart. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 452. Rong Xiu's figure moved, and he rapidly disappeared from the yard. Yu Mo and Yan Qing looked at each other and followed him. As the strange pattern cracked, Situ Xingqian officially broke through and became a Stage 5 warrior. Seeing that the light pillar didn't show any signs of disappearing and that Situ Xingqian, who was suspended in it, was still absorbing the surrounding heaven and earth force, Rongjio finally realized that something was amiss. If this continues, who knows if Situ Xingqian will continue to break through. He looked at Wei Lin. Have you found Elder Yi? Wei Lin shook his head. Rongjio pondered for a moment. Give the order to activate the Deep Xian formation. Upon hearing this, the crowd standing at the back looked at each other. Nobody expected Rongjio to use the Deep Xian formation, which Emperor Jiawen didn't have the time to activate, to deal with Situ Xingqian. Yes. Wei Lin quickly left with the others. The waiting time was always very unbearable. After around 15 minutes, a ripple finally came from the northwest corner of the palace. A star gradually appeared in midair. Following that, more and more dots of light appeared around the starlight. In the blink of an eye, they connected together. It was like a small galaxy. Almost at the same time, the same scene was happening in the other three directions. All the light spots gathered in the middle. It was as if there was an invisible hand connecting the four pieces of starlight together. When everything gathered together, it finally made a loud sound. It was like a gigantic star net that covered the entire palace. A vast suppression descended. The greenish-red light pillar was also suppressed by this force and started to shrink toward the center. At this point, Situ Xingqian suddenly opened her eyes. That pair of eyes that were always filled with water were now filled with a scarlet red. Brutal and cold murderous intent crazily surged out from the depths of her eyes. She looked at her wrists and ankles. With the help of that force, all her physical injuries had healed, and her cultivation level had also directly broken through from a stage 3 warrior to a stage 5 warrior. She slowly clenched her fists and felt the abundant strength in her body. She was elated. Previously, she was still a little hesitant, but it now seemed like her decision was right. Not to mention country Yaoqian, even in the entire world, how many people could break through to this level in such a short period of time? Most importantly, the energy in the bronze cauldron had not been completely exhausted. In other words, her strength would continue to rise. She raised her head and saw that the pillar of light seemed to be gradually shrinking. She smiled coldly. Then, she clasped her hands together and the force around her surged wildly. In an instant, the wind howled. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. The pillar of light that entered the clouds suddenly fell down like a waterfall. Those dazzling rays of light, along with an incomparably valiant power, madly surged into her body. Intense pain came from every part of his body. Situ Xingqian saw a few small wounds on her hand bursting open, and sticky, sweet blood slowly seeped out. However, she gritted her teeth and did not stop. Only in this way would he be able to break through faster. As long as she could endure this pain, she would become a top expert in the world. Very quickly, Rongjio and the rest saw the light pillar, which seemed to connect heaven and earth, rapidly decrease in size. Situ Xingqian's body was like a black hole as it crazily swallowed the light. The uneasiness in Rongjio's heart intensified. He hollered, "Deep Xian formation, activate." His low and powerful voice reverberated far and wide. Instantly, all the cultivators in the palace exerted their strength. Rays of light intersected on the gigantic Deep Xian formation. Very quickly, they outlined a gigantic figure. A dragon's roar reverberated between heaven and earth. It was actually a 7th-grade fiend, red-tailed flood dragon. Its entire body was silver, and only its tail was red like a burning flame. Its body was huge, and it almost covered the entire sky. When the dragon's roar sounded, even the ground seemed to move. The Deep Xian formation was a protective formation around the palace, but very few people knew that this Xian formation was actually suppressing a red-tailed flood dragon. And it was the most formidable part of the Deep Xian formation. Even though the red-tailed flood dragon was a 7th-grade fiend, it had the bloodline of an ancient legendary fiend, the Great Phoenix Dragon. The red-tailed flood dragon could be considered the strongest existence among the 7th-grade fiends. Rumors had it that some red-tailed flood dragons had the chance to break through to 8th grade or even higher. The red-tailed flood dragon hovered in midair, and its gigantic red eyes were icy cold. It was indifferent. Situ Xingqian's heart skipped a beat. I didn't expect a fiend of such a grade to be hidden under the deep Xian formation. Even though I'm already a stage 5 warrior, it's still a little wishful thinking for me to deal with a 7th grade fiend. Unless I can break through to the peak of a stage 6 warrior, I'll only have a sliver of hope. Situ Xingqian clenched her teeth, circulated her energy, and rapidly set up a barrier around her. The next moment, the red-tailed flood dragon rapidly charged towards Situ Xingqian. Wherever it passed, black cracks appeared in the air. This showed how strong the suppression around it was. Then, the dragon's tail harshly swung out. It heavily hit the barrier in front of Situ Xingqian. Boom! A loud collision sound was heard. A suppressive force directly passed through the barrier and crushed Situ Xingqian's body. Her body trembled, and her face instantly turned much paler. But the next moment, elation flashed across her eyes. That's because the barrier didn't break. With my current stage 5 warrior strength, the barrier I set up definitely won't be able to block the red-tailed flood dragon's attack. Hence, I directly used the light pillar's energy to form this barrier. It's indeed very strong. Situ Xingqian was slightly relieved and continued to absorb the surrounding heaven and earth force. As long as I have a little more time, I might be the red-tailed flood dragon's opponent. Seeing that Situ Xingqian actually withstood the red-tailed flood dragon's attack, the spectators below were shocked. What's with the greenish-red glow on her body? It actually contains such a strong force. In such a short time, she already broke through to become a stage 5 warrior? No. She's actually already an intermediate stage 5 warrior. Is she going to break through to become a stage 6 warrior? Did you see that? She seems to be bleeding. Her physical body probably can't take it anymore. What exactly is she planning to do? Not only in the palace, but everyone in the entire imperial city had already seen the commotion. They all looked up at the scene. Situ Xingqian ignored all the gazes. Something seemed to be moving in her chest, and blood kept seeping out of her body. However, she couldn't feel any pain and only felt that she was surrounded by a ball of fire. Suddenly, her gaze focused and she looked somewhere. She waved her sleeves. A powerful wave of energy swept out. Chu Luiyue, who was hiding in Qinghe Hall, felt the commotion behind him, and alarms went off in his heart. He turned around. A vast suppression came toward him. Digression, I slept at 5 p.m. Woo 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 woo. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 453. A strong force morphed into a bloody whip and harshly lashed toward her. Chu Luiyue immediately backed away. The wooden table that was blocking it instantly shattered. Shards flew everywhere. Half of Qinghe Hall's roof was instantly blown away. However, the bloody whip didn't stop. Instead, it swept toward Chu Luiyue at an even faster speed. Emperor Jianghu, who was standing on the other side of the room, was also shocked by the commotion and immediately turned around. The two of them looked into each other's eyes. Deep shock flashed across Emperor Jianghu's eyes. Chu Luiyue paused in her actions. However, during this short pause, the bloody whip had already reached her waist and was tightly coiling around her. Then, her body was harshly pulled away by the bloody whip. Emperor Jianghu's eyes flashed, and he actually hid in an even more secluded corner that wasn't affected. At the same time, the barrier around his body was strengthened. As long as nobody went near him, nobody would notice his abnormality. Chu Luiyue's heart sank. Emperor Jianghu's gaze just now was filled with murderous intent. At this moment, the bloody whip around her waist tightened again. Chu Luiyue suddenly turned around and realized that the other end of the bloody whip was in Situ Xingqian's hands. Situ Xingqian gently waved her wrist, and Chu Luiyue's body uncontrollably flew toward her. Chu Luiyue immediately pulled out her dagger. She harshly slashed at the bloody whip. The bloody whip broke with a loud sound. But before Chu Luiyue could rejoice, she saw the broken part of the bloody whip quickly reconnect. This blood whip was condensed from that strange power, and the dagger was unable to completely cut it apart. In the blink of an eye, she was only 10 steps away from Situ Xingqian. Situ Xingqian raised her chin and arrogantly looked at Chu Luiwei in front of her. It's indeed you. Now that she had broken through to become an intermediate stage 5 warrior, her perception of her surroundings had increased by several times. Just now, she clearly felt a very familiar and disgusting aura, so she decisively attacked. It really was that B*T6. Every time Situ Xingqian saw Chu Luiwei's face, hatred would surge in her heart. She would definitely make Chu Luiwei pay her back 100-fold for everything she had experienced before. Thinking of this, she waved her wrist without hesitation. The blood whip suddenly loosened and immediately lashed towards Chu Luiwei's face. Chu Luiwei immediately dodged. However, Situ Xingqian's current cultivation level was much higher than hers, and it was the same for her speed and strength. Even though she had already dodged at full speed, she was still caught in the crossfire. Chu Luiwei's left arm was instantly lacerated. Blood flowed like a river. Because of this powerful impact, her body also fell to the ground fiercely. The moment he saw Chu Luiwei appear in the air, Yi Lao was shocked and wanted to rush over to help. That girl is still a stage 3 warrior. How can she be Situ Xingqian's match? But as soon as he moved, Elder Zhong Yi blocked his path again. Elder Zhong Yi, who had suffered a lot previously and was very aggrieved, finally vented his anger. Yi Zhiding, didn't you say that your precious disciple is a rare genius? Why are you in such a hurry to help? Why don't we take a good look at the two of them and see who will win? Yi Zhiding finally couldn't hold it in and scolded. Who does that Situ Xingqian think she is? How can she be compared to my disciple? Do you think that the humiliation at the Qing Jiao competition wasn't enough? Zhong Yi, don't be smug too early. Situ Xingqian activated the bronze cauldron on her own accord and swallowed the strength of hundreds of cultivators. Even if she can break through in a short period of time, there will be endless trouble in the future. Zhong Ye's heart skipped a beat. No wonder I felt that Situ Xingqian's aura was a little off. But at such a crucial moment, how can I boost someone else's morale and destroy my own? You don't have to worry about this. You'd better think about whether or not your precious disciple can survive this time. From what I see, Xingqian's move can directly take away half of her life. She's just a stage 3 warrior. Perhaps she can't even last 3 moves against Xingqian. Yi Zhiding's expression was extremely cold as he stared at Elder Zhong Yi with deadly eyes and said word by word, I only have this one disciple in my entire life. If anyone dares to hurt her, I won't rest until I'm dead. As his voice fell, the aura on his body suddenly skyrocketed. Elder Zhong Yi was stunned. Yi Zhiding is actually serious about this. The next moment, Elder Yi had already rushed toward him. The two of them instantly engaged in a fight. Rong Jiao stared at the scene in midair, and his expression didn't look too good. Just now, Chu Luiwei seemed to have come out of Qinghe Hall. The crowd behind him fell silent. Rong Jiao turned around and walked toward Qinghe Hall with big strides. Previously, he had clearly sent quite a few people to escort Emperor Jiawen to Qinghe Hall, but Chu Luiwei was actually there as well. If it weren't for Situ Xingqian's sudden attack, he didn't know when he would find out about this. Just as Chu Luiwei's body was about to land heavily on the ground, she suddenly felt a force pulling her from behind. Chu Luiwei turned around and realized that it was Dumpling biting the corner of her shirt. She pulled her back. Well, the soft material couldn't withstand such a pull, and it suddenly tore apart. Panic flashed across Dumpling's eyes. If I land on her, I'll be seriously injured. The piercing aura was like a steel knife as it quickly scraped across Chu Luiwei's body. She focused her gaze and saw that the white marble floor was rapidly approaching. Her heart tingled, and she was about to activate the water droplet strength in her dantian when she saw a white figure flash across her eyes. The next moment, she felt herself falling into a ball of softness. Shue Shue! Chu Luiwei looked at Shue Shue, who suddenly appeared and saved her, in surprise. Shue Shue's 4 hooves stepped lightly as it carried Chu Luiwei up. A majestic lion's roar reverberated throughout the area. Everyone was stunned by this sudden scene. In midair, Chu Luiwei, who should have fallen to the ground, was sitting on the back of a muscular, snow-white lion. The wind blew, and her black hair fluttered like a black flag in the wind. Not only was there not the slightest bit of timidity or fear on that peerlessly beautiful face, it was instead filled with a lofty majesty. Cold, arrogant, determined. At one glance, she was incomparably noble, and it made one subconsciously want to submit to her. She and Situ Xingqian were facing each other from afar, but even Situ Xingqian, who had a higher cultivation level, seemed to be shorter. Countless pairs of eyes that saw this scene were all dazed. Is this really Chu Luiyue? Chu Luiyue lowered her gaze and glanced at the wound on her left arm. She then slowly raised her head and stared coldly at Situ Xingqian in front of her. Her lips suddenly curved up into a cold smile. Very good. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 454. Situ Xingqian was taken aback by Chu Luiyue's gaze, and a tinge of fear unknowingly grew in her heart. However, she suddenly woke up in the next moment. Fear? Chu Luiyue is definitely not my match now. The one who should be afraid should be Chu Luiyue. Situ Xingqian suppressed her emotions as her gaze landed on the white lion, and her pupils constricted. That's clearly Rong Xiu's fiend. Rong Xiu has never summoned it in front of others before, and very few people know about this. I only found out about it once by accident. Now, it actually appeared here and even saved Chu Luiyue. Is it trying to help Chu Luiyue to the end? Situ Xingqian clenched her teeth and suddenly sneered. But, do you want to fight with me? Chu Luiyue circulated the force around his body, and an abundant amount of force flowed out of his dantian and into his right index finger. You wanted to kill me first. Am I not allowed to kill you in return? Situ Xingqian did not care about Chu Luiyue's actions. Instead, she chuckled as if she had heard a joke. You're just a stage 3 warrior? Her words were filled with undisguised mockery and disdain. Chu Luiyue's smile deepened. Yes, I do. I'm indeed a stage 3 warrior now, but I didn't say that I can only display the abilities of a stage 3 warrior. Situ Xingqian almost thought that Chu Luiyue had gone crazy. Okay, today I want to see how long you can be arrogant for. The moment she said that, the bloody whip in her hand flew up again. She whipped it harshly. This time, she used an even stronger force than before. When the bloody whip pierced through the air, it easily tore the space apart and left a few black cracks. In the blink of an eye, the bloody whip carried a strong force and went straight for Chu Luiyue. Shui quickly dodged. Its speed was extremely fast, and it looked like a bolt of lightning. The blood whip missed. Situ Xingqian's face darkened. With the help of that high-level magical beast, not to mention killing Chu Luiyue, even wanting to injure her had become a difficult task. She raised her wrist. The blood whip chased after Chu Luiyue. But Shui's figure flashed, and she easily dodged the attack again. Situ Xingqian refused to believe it and attacked again. Above the blood whip, there was even a faint layer of green-red light. The power contained within it was much stronger than the previous 2 times. When the bloody whip flew out, Situ Xingqian angrily shouted, "What the hell? Don't run if you have the guts." Before Chu Luiyue could reply, Shui had already turned around and raised a claw, swinging it forward fiercely. The blood whip was torn apart by Shui's claws. Situ Xingqian gasped. This magical beast was actually stronger than he had imagined? Shui glanced at Situ Xingqian. Her icy blue eyes were cold and indifferent. It was as if she was looking down on an ant. Chu Luiyue lightly patted Shui's head. Well done. Shui turned around, and the frost in its eyes disappeared, replaced by unconcealed arrogance and delight. That huge, furry head intimately rubbed against Chu Luiyue's palm a few times. It was completely different from its previous cold and dignified appearance. Situ Xingqian was so angry that her lungs were about to explode. She was also affected by the counterattack just now. Her internal organs felt like they were squeezed into a ball. She originally wanted to take the chance to take revenge and get rid of Chu Luiyue completely, but it seemed like it would be a little difficult now. Unless my cultivation level could increase again. I can only kill Chu Luiwei if I continue to cultivate and become an even stronger warrior. Thinking of this, Situ Xingqian took a deep breath in and strengthened the barrier around her. Then, she closed her eyes and continued to absorb the surrounding power. Actually, the power contained in the greenish-red light from the bronze cauldron kept flowing into her body. As long as she focused at the most crucial moment and tried to break through, she would succeed. Chu Luiwei saw Situ Xingqian suddenly stop. He thought about it and understood her intentions. How can there be such a good thing in the world? Fighting whenever she wants and stopping to break through whenever she wants? Just as Chu Luiwei thought of this, a red figure flashed across his eyes. Dumpling actually flew directly towards Situ Xingqian. At this point, if Chu Luiwei was in front, he would see Dumpling puffing up her cheeks in anger. Damn it! My limelight has been stolen. Once Dumpling thought of how it tried to pull Chu Luiwei back but failed and was even swept away by that power, it was furious and embarrassed. Compared to the White Lion's performance, it had no face at all. Upon seeing Dumpling rushing toward her, Situ Xingqian's lips curled up into a cold smile. This barrier's defensive power is very strong, and even the 7th-grade red-tailed flood dragon might not be able to break it, let alone this 3rd-grade blood ferret. It does have some capabilities, but, with a bang, Dumpling directly pounced on the barrier and harshly bit down on it. Gotcha! A gigantic hole instantly appeared. Situ Xingqian's smile froze, and disbelief filled her eyes. How is this possible? As if venting its anger, Dumpling harshly bit to the side. Gotcha! A similar scene appeared in the Qing Jiao competition again. Even Chu Luiwei couldn't help but be shocked. Why does Dumpling's teeth seem to be better than before? Even though the barrier around Situ Xingqian was thick, it couldn't stop Dumpling from creating such a barrier. At first, she wanted to ignore this matter and quickly break through. However, when she saw Dumpling biting a hole and stuffing itself into it, she finally couldn't take it anymore and was forced to stop. Chu Luiwei, if you're really capable, fight one-on-one with me. F***ck, these fiends are nothing. Chu Luiwei blinked and smiled. Isn't it my capability that I can summon such a fiend to help me? I didn't say that you can't do this. Since you hate me to the core, just use whatever means you have. Situ Xingqian's chest seemed to be choked by something, and her face flushed red. How can a normal fiend be these two's match? Chu Luiwei suddenly shouted, Xue Xingqian. Xue Xue. Xue Xue seemed to have telepathy with her as it stomped on the ground and instantly rushed towards Situ Xingqian. Upon seeing this scene, everyone was shocked. Is Chu Luiwei actually planning to fight Situ Xingqian head-on? That white lion is a high-level fiend. Didn't you see how easily it defeated Situ Xingqian's attack? With its help, Chu Luiwei might win. But Situ Xingqian is a few grades stronger than her. If they fight head-on, Chu Luiwei will definitely be at a disadvantage. 2 rays of light, 1 green and 1 red, gathered in Situ Xingqian's hands. Then she harshly clasped her hands together. The 2 rays of light instantly clashed together. Dual palms. Chu Luiwei raised her hand. On her right index finger, a dazzling ray of light suddenly flashed. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 455. That ray of light shone in her eyes, and it was dazzling beyond compare. However, this ray of light was nothing compared to the gigantic greenish-red palm print that Situ Xingqian executed in midair. Everyone's gaze was focused on the palm print that contained a strong suppression. Chu Luiwei looked up and squinted her eyes slightly. There seemed to be a strange pattern in the middle of the palm print, and it was faintly discernible. It was exactly the same as the pattern that appeared on the light pillar previously. Chu Luiwei's heart skipped a beat. That pattern was clearly a seal, but for some reason, it appeared on the palm print again. Suddenly, she felt a movement coming from the cosmic bag. It was the wooden box that she snatched from Situ Xingqian previously. That strange pattern seemed to contain a special power. Every time it appeared, it would cause a huge reaction from the wooden box. At this moment, Situ Xingqian hollered, "Go!" That palm print slowly moved toward Chu Luiwei. A strong suppression was continuously emitted from it. The surrounding space seemed to be greatly suppressed as it became heavy and stagnant. Chu Luiwei could clearly feel that she was in a swamp, and every move she made required a lot of effort. Situ Xingqian's power has definitely reached the peak of stage 5. Chu Luiwei is probably in danger. She actually rushed forward. It's definitely too late for her to escape now. I really don't know what she's thinking. The crowd discussed fervently. Chu Luiwei, who was in midair, didn't hear them. But even if she could hear them, she wouldn't care. Since she dared to do this, she naturally has her reasons. That gigantic palm print seemed to be moving slowly, but it was actually very fast. In the blink of an eye, it was right in front of Chu Luiwei. In comparison, Chu Luiwei looked exceptionally thin and petite, as if she would be swallowed by that palm print at any moment. But at this moment, Chu Luiwei finally stretched out her right hand and lightly tapped forward with her index finger. Jingxian finger. Buzz. A ripple suddenly appeared in midair. Then, the faint glow on his fingertip suddenly shone brightly. Half of the sky above Chu Luiwei's head seemed to have lit up. That light was grand, brilliant, and majestic. It was as if it could generously and gently encompass everything in the world. Under the illumination of this light, the strange pattern on the palm print suddenly appeared extremely ugly. The power of both sides intertwined. Like snow meeting sunlight, the palm print actually began to quietly and quickly melt away. The smug smile on Situ Xingqian's face suddenly froze, and fear crept into her eyes. How could this be? How could this be? She had used all of her strength in this attack. But why was he defeated so quickly after Chu Luiwei made his move? From the looks of it, there was no room for a counterattack. Situ Xingqian kept circulating the energy in her body and channeling it into the palm print, but it was to no avail. She looked at Chu Luiwei in disbelief and resentment. One finger. Chu Luiwei actually used one finger to defeat me. Actually, Chu Luiwei was just as shocked as Situ Xingqian. This was the first time she had officially executed Jingxian finger after learning it. She knew that Jingxian finger was very powerful, but she didn't expect it to be this powerful. It was clearly stronger than same-grade warrior techniques. Chu Luiwei looked at his finger. That grand and brilliant light contained immense power. If she didn't see it with her own eyes, she probably wouldn't have believed this scene. Could this be the strength of a heaven-grade warrior technique? Situ Xingqian finally panicked. If I continue fighting with Chu Luiwei, I definitely won't be able to gain any advantage. The only thing I can do now is to quickly increase my abilities. Boom. That gigantic palm print finally disappeared completely. Even that strange pattern disappeared once again. Blood seeped out of the corner of Situ Xingqian's mouth. Together with her originally blood-stained body, she looked even more pathetic. The next moment, she suddenly turned around and ran into the distance. Chu Luiwei raised his brows slightly and patted Xue Xue lightly. Xue Xue immediately understood and rushed forward. Its speed was naturally faster than Situ Xingqian's, and it blocked her path in no time. Seeing that Chu Luiwei had caught up so quickly, Situ Xingqian's face turned a little ugly. Eldest Princess Situ, we haven't decided who the winner is, yet you're running away just like that? Isn't it a little inappropriate? Asked Chu Luiwei with a faint smile. Situ Xingqian clenched her teeth. She could feel countless pairs of eyes staring at her from below. Mockery, mockery, and disdain. They're all here for me. Who said that I'm running away? Situ Xingqian forced herself to shout, and her voice was much sharper than before. You just used some unorthodox methods. Chu Luiwei, do you really think that you're my match? Chu Luiwei laughed. Unorthodox methods? Those words should be returned to Situ Xingqian. You'll know whether I'm your match or not very soon. Chu Luiwei smiled, but a tinge of murderous intent flashed across her eyes. The next moment, she jumped up and went straight for Situ Xingqian. Situ Xingqian was shocked at first, but she then sneered in her heart. Chu Luiwei actually wants to have a physical fight with me. This is the stupidest choice I've made today. The two of us are 2 whole stages apart, and Chu Luiwei's physical strength can't be compared to mine. If Chu Luiwei continues to use the previous move, I might not be able to withstand it. But no, I'm clearly courting death. You're courting death. Situ Xingqian circulated the force in her body and stretched out her hand. Flying eagle claw. A few afterimages mixed together. They all went for Chu Liyue's face. Chu Liyue leaned forward. She didn't know how her wrist moved, but it avoided Situ Xingqian's move and tightly clamped onto her wrist. Then she exerted force with her fingers and tightly clenched them. Kacha! The crisp sound of a bone breaking was heard. Ah! Situ Xingqian cried out in pain. Her entire face turned pale. At that moment, there was only one thought left in her mind. Why is Chu Liyue's wrist so strong? Situ Xingqian instinctively raised her leg and kicked at Chu Liyue. However, Chu Liyue was even faster. Bang! The two people's legs harshly collided. Situ Xingqian felt as if she had hit a metal plate, and her entire leg instantly turned numb. After a short pause, intense pain surged through her. She suddenly looked up and stared at Chu Liyue with eyes full of resentment. UB***. Chu Liyue's lips curved up, and a cold glint flashed across her palm. It went straight for Situ Xingqian's heart. Situ Xingqian was shocked. She immediately tried her best to dodge it. That dagger pierced into her chest and was only a few centimeters away from her heart. However, Chu Liyue didn't let go. Instead, he tightened his grip on the dagger's handle and harshly twisted it. Separate! Two thin flying daggers instantly entered Situ Xingqian's body. Digression, I'm adjusting my schedule today. I'll take my medicine and sleep later. I hope I can sleep well. Tomorrow at 6 o'clock a.m., please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 456. Too cold, piercing sensations instantly spread throughout her body. Situ Xingqian's face turned pale, and she slowly lowered her head to take a look. Blood slowly seeped out from the front of her shirt. Choo-choo! Two flying daggers pierced through her chest and flew out. Chu Liyue bent his arm and harshly hit her shoulder with his elbow. Situ Xingqian violently spat out a mouthful of blood and flew backward. Chu Liyue hurriedly dodged and jumped onto Xue Xue's back, which happened to rush over. Bang! Situ Xingqian landed heavily on the ground. As the force of the impact was too strong, her body dragged on the ground for a long time before finally stopping. A long trail of blood was left on the ground, and it looked ghastly. There was dead silence in the sky. Almost everyone thought that Chu Liyue was dead for sure, but they didn't expect Situ Xingqian to be the one who lost after the two of them had an intense fight. Even though the fiend's appearance couldn't go unnoticed, Chu Liyue did personally knock Situ Xingqian down just now. Elder Yi and Elder Zhongyi, who were in the midst of a chaotic fight, finally stopped when they saw this scene. However, the two of them had very different expressions. Elder Ye's worries instantly disappeared, and the wrinkles on his face bloomed like a flower. His eyes were filled with unconcealable delight. I've long said that Situ Xingqian doesn't have the right to be compared to Luyu. Zhongyi, what else do you have to say now? Elder Zhongye's face was so ugly that it was as if he had swallowed a fly. Situ Xingqian's cultivation level is clearly much higher than Chu Liyue's. How could she lose? I originally thought that I would definitely win this match. Yet it ended up like this. His eyes flickered, and he immediately wanted to go forward. Sigh. Zhongyi, what are you planning to do? Old Man Yi moved and stood in front of Elder Zhongyi, his face full of smiles. Zhongye's face darkened. You want to stop me? Look at what you're saying. Didn't you also stop me just now? We're the same. Ha. Looking at Zhongye's ugly face, Elder Yi only felt proud and elated. Just now, I wanted to help Lu Yu, but this fellow stopped me. Now, I want to help Situ Xingqian. How can it be so easy? Elder Zhongyi frowned. With Yi Zhiding around, he couldn't spare any time to help at all. Didn't you say earlier that you wanted to see who would win in the end? Then, why don't we watch it together? Elder Ye's face was full of smiles, but the biting cold aura around him made it clear that he absolutely would not let Elder Zhongyi pass. Elder Zhongye's heart was filled with hatred. While the two of them were talking, Xue Xue had already swooped down with Chu Liyue. Chu Liyue easily leaped and landed on the ground. Situ Xingqian struggled to stand up. However, the wounds on his body were still bleeding. The pain on her shoulder and back was intense. She didn't need to look to know that her shoulder blade had been pierced. "Didn't you want to fight me one-on-one?" Chu Luiyue said slowly as he played with the dagger in his hand. "As you wish." It was much more convenient for the two of them to fight on the ground. When Sidu Xingqian saw Chu Luiyue's nonchalant smile, she couldn't help but shiver harshly. She only felt that the current Chu Luiyue was like a demon that walked out of hell. "What do you want to do?" Situ Xingqian yelled fiercely. "I am country Xing Luo's eldest princess. How dare you touch me?" Chu Luiyue couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Eldest Princess Situ, of course, I know your identity. But didn't I just punch a hole through you? You don't have to ask such nonsense, right?" Situ Xingqian's heart sank. Chu Luiyue really looks like he doesn't have any reservations at all. "You seem to have forgotten what you just did." Chu Luiyue lifted his chin, and his gaze swept across her entire body. "Who do you think will speak up for you now?" After causing such a huge commotion in country Yao Chen's palace, neither Emperor Jiawen nor Rongjiu would let this matter rest. Besides, Situ Xingqian was in the wrong first. Previously, Si Yan couldn't save her, so it's even more impossible this time. As Chu Luiyue spoke, he took a step forward. Panic flashed across Situ Xingqian's eyes, and she instinctively took a step back. The current me might not even be Chu Luiyue's match. Besides, Chu Luiyue has an advanced fiend helping him. Situ Xingqian's heart became increasingly frantic, and something crazily moved in her chest, wanting to rush out. It would be great if he could become stronger. It was as if a sharp voice kept reverberating in her mind. Chu Luiyue squinted his eyes and was about to go forward to finish Situ Xingqian off completely when he saw her suddenly look up. A bloody glow flashed across Situ Xingqian's eyes. Chu Luiyue's eyes shrunk. Instinctively, he felt that something was amiss with Situ Xingqian. Previously, Situ Xingqian's eyes were actually bloodshot, but Chu Luiyue thought that she became like that because of her anger and agitation. But now, that bloody red color seemed to have become even more intense. The most important thing was that Situ Xingqian's pupils had actually turned red as well. From afar, they looked like two eyeballs filled with craziness and murderous aura. Dong dong. A strange sound came from the Jianghu bag. Dong dong. This time, the sound was even clearer. Chu Luiyue suddenly understood something. This was the sound from the wooden box in the cosmic bag. The thing inside seemed to have been summoned and crazily wanted to come out. She lowered her head and was about to suppress it when she suddenly saw a ray of light rushing out and heading straight for Situ Xingqian. It was that wooden box. Situ Xingqian grabbed the wooden box in her hands. Chu Luiyue's eyelids twitched. Then she saw Situ Xingqian open the wooden box. That goatskin scroll glowed faintly as it floated in front of Situ Xingqian. Situ Xingqian threw the wooden box down and slowly bit her fingertip. A drop of blood quickly flowed out. The next moment, she held the goatskin scroll in her hands and used her bleeding finger to lightly draw a line on it. Chu Luiyue stared at this scene closely and felt that she seemed to have overlooked something. After looking at it for a while, she finally understood what was going on. Situ Xingqian seemed to be controlled by something. At this moment, there was no longer any normal emotions in her pair of eyes. There was only endless craziness and murderous intent left. Her movements were stiff and slow, as if there was an invisible hand that was controlling everything about her. Chu Luiyue's gaze landed on the goatskin scroll again. Suddenly, her eyes focused. The picture that Situ Xingqian drew with her blood was clearly Chu. Chu Luiyue quickly threw the dagger in her hand. It went straight for Situ Xingqian. But at this moment, Situ Xingqian had already drawn the last line. The complete and strange picture appeared in front of her eyes. Ding! The dagger seemed to have hit something and suddenly bounced back. The next moment, the goatskin scroll slowly opened up. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 457. A blinding red light instantly exploded from the parchment and completely surrounded Situ Xingqian. Then, countless tiny cracks instantly appeared on Situ Xingqian's body. Fresh blood splattered everywhere. With a bang, Situ Xingqian fell to the ground and curled up into a ball. Her mind was blank, and she only felt pain and itchiness all over her body. It was as if thousands of ants were crazily biting her. Situ Xingqian almost instinctively scratched her body. Not only did she tear her clothes, but she even used her delicately manicured nails to leave streaks of blood on her skin. When her neck was scratched out of shape, she finally reached her hand to her face. Then she scratched it harshly without hesitation. A few streaks of blood instantly covered half of her face. Her originally pretty face was ruined in an instant. It became ugly and scary. Ah! Situ Xingqian screamed hysterically. Upon seeing this scene, Chu Luiyue knitted his brows tightly. Situ Xingqian's body is clearly being taken over. Also, the person who wants to take over her body has a very high cultivation level. That's why her physical body couldn't withstand the terrifying suppression, and her skin and flesh were torn apart. It's no wonder I couldn't break the barrier on the parchment no matter what. It turns out that there's another cultivator's soul hidden inside. Situ Xingqian's body gradually stopped twitching. The moment the red light on her body disappeared, she slowly stood up and looked up at Chu Luiyue. That's a completely different pair of eyes. Unfamiliar, cold, and ruthless. Alarm bells rang in Chu Luiyue's heart, and he immediately retreated. But at this moment, Situ Xingqian raised her hand. Chu Luiyue only felt a strong suction force enveloping his entire body, and his entire body uncontrollably fell forward. Shui Shui roared angrily and jumped over. Situ Xingqian's gaze turned and coldly glanced at it. A huge blood-red barrier instantly appeared, blocking Shui Shui outside. Bang! Shui Shui slammed heavily into the barrier. However, the barrier wasn't damaged at all. Many ways to escape flashed across Chu Luiyue's mind, but she quickly realized that the force in her body was being suppressed by the other party's suppression. Under this terrifying suppression, her body almost couldn't move. The next moment, Situ Xingqian suddenly grabbed her neck. Chu Luiyue's neck tightened. Situ Xingqian looked at Chu Luiyue from above, and her lips curled into a cold smile. I really have to thank you. Even though it was the same face and voice, Chu Luiyue knew that this wasn't the real Situ Xingqian when she saw the pair of eyes. Without you, Shui Shui and Situ Shui and it. Chu Luiyue's neck was strangled, and her entire body was suspended in the air. As the hand kept tightening, Chu Luiyue's face gradually flushed red, and her chest felt so stifled that it was about to explode. Why you? Chu Luiyue wanted to say something, but she could only spit out a few words. She tried to pry Situ Xingqian's hand away, but she only felt sticky and sweet blood. Situ Xingqian watched her struggle as if she was watching a joke. Her eyes were filled with disdain and contempt. Crack! Another crisp sound was heard. Situ Xingqian looked up. Dumpling had already rushed to the barrier she had set up and tried to bite an opening. But this time, it only left clear teeth marks on the surface. How can the barrier I personally set up be broken so easily? Her tone was light, but it was filled with unconcealed arrogance. Chu Luiyue was even more certain that this person had already taken over Situ Xingqian. Even if the real Situ Xingqian isn't dead, she's not far from it. Tuanzi's face was full of resentment. She didn't believe it and bit down again. Crack! It was the same as before. Situ Xingqian seemed to be impatient as she turned her gaze and looked at Shui Shui. She then revealed a meaningful smile. This fiend is quite capable, but it's a pity that it's not yours. This sentence was naturally directed at Chu Luiyue. But at this point, Chu Luiyue's face was flushed red, and she was almost suffocating. She couldn't even say a single word. Situ Xingqian admired it for a while in satisfaction before slowly saying, I originally intended to kill you. I didn't plan to kill you, but since you've destroyed this body, don't blame me for being merciless. Chu Luiyue suddenly raised her hand, and a cold glint flashed across her palm. The dagger instantly stabbed towards Situ Xingqian's wrist. But Situ Xingqian seemed to have expected it as she quickly reached out with her other hand and directly clamped Chu Luiyue's wrist. She harshly twisted it. Gotcha! Excruciating pain attacked her. Chu Luiyue's vision turned black for a moment. It's just an eye for an eye. Situ Xingqian sneered, and her eyes were filled with intense murderous intent. The moment the bones in her hand broke, the dagger also landed in Situ Xingqian's hand. She held the dagger and pressed it against Chu Liuyue's face. The cold touch made Chu Liuyue's heart tremble. "Your face is quite... This dagger." As Situ Xingqian spoke, her gaze suddenly landed on the dagger, and her eyes changed. Chu Liyue wasn't sure if it was an illusion, but he vaguely saw a tinge of shock and fear on her face. Now is the time. Chu Liyue gathered all the strength in his body, hugged Situ Xingqian's wrist with both hands, and harshly twisted it. At the same time that she instinctively let go of her hand, she kicked her leg out. With the help of the rebound force, Chu Liyue finally broke free from Situ Xingqian's grip and jumped back. But this time, Situ Xingqian didn't immediately chase after him. Instead, she looked at Chu Liyue in confusion. Where did this dagger come from? Her tone was very anxious, and there seemed to be a tinge of fear in it. Chu Liyue knitted his brows. The person who asked this question wasn't the real Situ Xingqian but the person who took over her body. However, there doesn't seem to be anything special about this dagger, so why did she have such a reaction? Seeing that Chu Liyue didn't react, Situ Xingqian became even more anxious and took a step forward. Hurry up and say it. A thought suddenly flashed across Chu Liyue's mind. This dagger was given to me by Rong Xiu back then. Also, if I didn't remember wrongly, he seemed to have personally polished it. This should be the only one in the world, and other people shouldn't be able to recognize it. This person's reaction is really too strange. What if I don't want to say it? Chu Liyue asked word by word. Situ Xingqian chuckled. You don't want to say it, right? I naturally have my ways to make you say it clearly. The moment she said that, she quickly crossed her hands in front of her, and the force around her crazily surged. A ball of white flame quickly burned in front of her. Then, the flame split into two and completely surrounded Chu Liyue. Her figure was instantly surrounded by the scorching flame. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 458. The fire burned fiercely. It was as if it was going to burn everything to ashes. Lu Yu. Elder Yi couldn't help but exclaim in shock. Elder Zongyi, who had been fighting for a long time, finally found a chance and punched Elder Ye's chest. Elder Ye's body trembled, and he only stabilized himself after taking a few steps back. Blood seeped out of the corner of his mouth. Elder Zongyi looked at the burning fire. Chu Liuyue's figure had almost disappeared. Yi Zhiding, it seems like your precious disciple is going to die this time. Elder Yi clenched his fists and looked at Elder Zongyi as if he was looking at an idiot. Zongyi, has your brain been eaten by a dog? Can't you tell that Situ Xingqian's body has long been possessed? That woke him up from his dream. Upon hearing the word, possessed, Elder Zongyi's heart skipped a beat, and he hurriedly looked at Situ Xingqian. He didn't notice it previously, but now that he looked at it again, he felt that everything was strange. He and Yi Zhiding were locked in a fight, so he didn't notice Situ Xingqian and Chu Liuyue's situation. He only vaguely remembered that Situ Xingqian seemed to have gone through a shocking change, and her abilities suddenly increased by a lot. Previously, he thought that Situ Xingqian had become stronger because she had absorbed more energy. But now that he took a closer look, he realized that her aura seemed to be completely different from before. Every cultivator's aura was different. The current Situ Xingqian did seem to have become another person. Elder Yi wanted to twist Zongye's head off and see what kind of trash was inside. As a Stage 6 warrior, he didn't even notice this. But now, he only cared about Chu Liyue. Elder Yi finally shook Elder Zongyi off while he was in a daze and went straight for Chu Liyue. At the same time, Jian Fengqi, who was hiding in the dark, saw this scene and squinted his eyes. His attention was mostly on Situ Xingqian at this point. A soul that can possess a body is at least a Stage 7 warrior when they were alive. Country Yaochen may seem ordinary, but there are many secrets hidden in it. From the looks of it, Mu Qinghe had left a little too early and missed out on so many exciting shows. His gaze landed on the fire and he raised his eyebrows. Although he felt that Chu Liyue, Situ Xingchen, Situ Xingchen, Situ Xingchen's SS. Situ, Situ Xingchen, and Situ Xingchen 2's to Situ. If anything were to happen, Mu Qinghe would definitely find trouble with him. Thinking of this, Jian Fengqi gently turned his palm in his sleeves, and light flashed beneath his feet. Just as he was about to rush up, he suddenly felt a biting cold aura flash past him from the side. He immediately became alert and turned his head to look in that direction. A black-robed figure quickly disappeared before his eyes. To Situ to him, where? Suddenly he was shocked in his heart. This aura seems to be... Why are they here? Jian Fengqi moved. He had a strong urge to chase after Situ Xingchen. Just as he was about to follow Situ Xingchen caught sight of the fire again. Situ Xingchen stopped, turned, and walked toward Chu Luiyue. Qi Han paused. He heaved a sigh of relief after making sure that Jian Fengqi didn't follow him. He had been secretly following Chu Luiyue the whole time. The most important mission of the 13th Guard was to protect Her Highness. Now that Her Highness had reunited with Her Highness and the rest of the 13th Guard wasn't around, he took on this responsibility again. He was good at hiding. That was why he hadn't been discovered after following Situ Xingchen for so long. But when he saw that Her Highness was in danger, he was worried and accidentally leaked his aura, which was detected by Jian Fengqi. Fortunately, Situ Xingchen didn't follow Situ Xingchen. Qi Han was relieved. He looked at the white fire again and frowned. Her Highness is still a stage 3 warrior. Even though she's stronger than she looks, she's still lacking compared to before. Situ Xingchen's body has been taken over, and her combat power is above that of a stage 6 warrior. Her Highness shouldn't be able to handle it alone. Qi Han wanted to rush forward, but many people were watching. Once he did, he would be noticed. If he wasn't careful, he would suspect Her Highness's identity. Qi Han thought for a while. He finally decided to take action when he saw the fire burning more fiercely. No matter what, I have to save Her Highness first. But the moment he took a step forward, he heard a low and calm voice behind him. She can solve this problem by herself. Qi Han immediately turned around. A tall and slender figure came into view. His gaze froze when he saw the person's face. Princely Rongxiu. If you go out now, you'll bring her a lot of trouble. Don't you know? Rongxiu was wearing a snow-colored brocade shirt and a black cloak. He had one hand behind his back and he stood tall. His thin lips curved up slightly, and he had a faint smile on his face, making him look gentle and graceful. But his eyes and brows had a suppressive aura that couldn't be ignored, making one subconsciously submit to him. Qi Han stared at Rongxiu without saying a word. He actually didn't know when Rongxiu appeared behind him. Now that the two of them were confronting each other, he actually felt a faint threat from Rongxiu. That was the suppressive aura that only the strong had. From this, it was enough to tell that Rongxiu's skills were definitely above his. The air between the two of them seemed to have frozen, and it was stiff and stagnant. Rongxiu wasn't worried that Qi Han would see through his skills. During this period, Qi Han had also been probing around Princely Mansion, so he must have realized that something was amiss. If the 13 guards didn't even have this bit of ability, they didn't need to exist. They would only be a burden to her if they stayed by her side. Just as Qi Han was hesitating on how to deal with this, a loud sound was suddenly heard. He immediately turned around to look. His pupils shrank. He saw a red flame suddenly rushing out from the burning white flame. In an instant, sparks flew everywhere. With that ball of flame as the center, violent energy crazily swept out in all directions. The road paved with white jade was instantly smashed to smithereens and sent flying everywhere. The crimson flames covered the sky and engulfed the white flames with ease. It was almost a one-sided suppression. A slender and straight figure gradually became clear. Countless pairs of eyes stared at that figure. She walked out slowly, her black hair and clothes fluttering. Her eyes were piercingly cold. She was like the god of death who had walked out from the flames of hell. Everyone who saw this scene sucked in a breath of cold air. That was Chu Luiyue. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 459. Her entire body was burning with scarlet flames. Reflected in her eyes, it became a flickering flame. Her footsteps were neither fast nor slow, but every step she took felt like she was stepping on the crowd's hearts. Jian Fengqi and Elder Yi, who originally wanted to rush over to help her, subconsciously stopped. Qi Han clenched his fists tightly and tried his best to control the waves in his heart. Her Highness is indeed Her Highness. Even if she's at a disadvantage, she can still survive. How many people in this world can do this? He could not help but turn around to look at Rongxiu, but he did not see any shock on Rongxiu's face. Instead, Rongxiu had a faint smile as if he had already expected all of this. This Prince Li seems to be even more mysterious and powerful than I expected. Sidu Xingqian's cold and fierce eyes suddenly cracked, revealing a tinge of shock and panic. For some reason, she felt a strong threat from Chu Luiyue. He's just a stage 3 warrior. Where did this suppression and aura come from? Chu Luiyue finally stood still and looked up at Sidu Xingqian. She then raised her hand. A ball of crimson flames suddenly condensed in her palm. A terrifying pressure slowly spread out from the fireball. Sidu Xingqian felt increasingly uneasy, and her throat became extremely dry. Chu Luiyue stared at her, and his lips suddenly curled up into a smile, but it was extremely cold. She enunciated every word clearly. I hate it when people snatch my things. It was so in the past, and it's even more so now. Sidu Xingqian's heart suddenly sank, and she instinctively retreated. Chu Luiyue remained standing at his original spot, and he quickly waved his arm. Go! The fist-sized fireball immediately flew towards Sidu Xingqian. Wherever it passed, a deep rut would appear on the ground. Sidu Xingqian was fast, but it was even faster. The crowd only saw a fireball flying across the sky. The next moment, the fireball had already rushed in front of Sidu Xingqian. Unable to avoid it, Sidu Xingqian simply stopped and clenched her teeth. In the end, Chu Luiyue was only a stage 3 warrior. How strong could he be? She didn't believe that she couldn't even take a blow from Chu Luiyue. Thinking of this, Sidu Xingqian rapidly gathered the force in her body, transformed it into a sickle-like blood-colored light blade, and flew forward. The blood-red light blade instantly split the fireball into two. Sidu Xingqian snorted. That's all. Before she could finish speaking, her expression suddenly froze. Chu Luiyue's smile deepened. Originally, I wanted to do it myself. I didn't expect you to take the initiative. You saved me a lot of effort. Other than Sidu Xingqian, nobody else could see that there was a transparent flame hidden in the middle of the red fireball. Chu Luiyue fused the two powers and delivered a fatal blow. The moment Sidu Xingqian saw the transparent fire, she widened her eyes in shock. That was whoosh. Two balls of flame swept over. Before Sidu Xingqian could move, she felt an intense burning pain in her chest. She slowly lowered her head and saw that there was a bloody hole the size of a fist in her lower abdomen. Although it was a bloody hole, no blood actually flowed out. Due to the flame's terrifyingly high temperature, the skin and flesh around the wound were instantly charred, and the entire wound looked terrifying. However, the most important thing was that the pearl of essence was in her abdomen. When her abdomen was pierced, the pearl of essence inside was completely shattered. Sidu Xingqian looked at the wound on her body and was dazed for a long time. It wasn't until she felt the origin power in her body begin to disperse uncontrollably that she finally came to her senses. You destroyed this physical body. She suddenly looked up, and her eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. This was the chance that I waited for with much difficulty. It hadn't even been a quarter of an hour since she had successfully taken over this body. Chu Luiyue smiled. This physical body isn't worthy of you. You don't have to thank me. Sidu Xingqian was about to go crazy. She had waited for so many years and put in so much effort, but in the end, it was so easily destroyed by Chu Luiyue. Sidu Xingqian let out a sharp roar filled with hatred. However, her pearl of essence was already shattered, and she couldn't gather force with this body. The more she wanted to recover, the worse the situation was. It was as if the more she wanted to hold onto the sand in her hands, the faster it would flow away. She tried many times, but her pearl of essence was already destroyed, and it couldn't be recovered. Faced with Situ Xingxin's overwhelming murderous intent, Chu Luiyue didn't care at all and looked relaxed. Every time you possess a body, you'll use up a lot of force and might even damage yourself. I think you can't possess a second body now, right? Asked Chu Luiyue with a faint smile. Situ Xingxin was so angry that her face turned white. This was because Chu Luiyue was speaking the truth. Under such circumstances, it would be a fool's dream to possess Chu Luiyue's body again and kill her. Her expression changed, and ruthlessness flashed across her eyes. Bang! Situ Xingxin's body suddenly exploded. Xingxin! Elder Zhong Ye's face turned white in an instant. He looked at this scene in disbelief and felt that the world was spinning. He staggered and almost fell to the ground. Situ Xingxin had been at Mingyue Tianshan for many years, and he had always doted on her and even treated her as his own. Now that he suddenly saw this scene, it was undoubtedly a huge blow to him. His eyes instantly turned red, and he hated Chu Luiyue to the core. Chu Luiyue, give me your life. Without waiting for him to rush over, Elder Yi blocked him once again. Elder Zhong Yi was about to go crazy. Yi Zhiding. Chu Luiyue killed Xingxin, and this debt isn't over. Elder Yi was so angry that he laughed. Situ Xingxin already died when she was possessed. If you want to blame someone, you should blame the person who possessed her. Why are you blaming my disciple? If they did it, they would admit it. If they didn't do it, they definitely wouldn't take the blame. The reason why Situ Xingxin was possessed was clearly because she crazily swallowed the bronze cauldron's energy until she summoned that spiritual body. She just reaped what she sowed. If she knew this would happen, why did she do it back then? Elder Zhong Ye's face turned red and white, and the veins on his forehead and neck popped up as if he was on the verge of breaking down. However, he couldn't say anything to rebut him. This was because he knew deep down that Yi Zhiding was right. However, it was impossible for him to admit it just like that. This is all because of Chu Luiyue. If it weren't for her, Xingxin definitely wouldn't have ended up like this. As he spoke, he directly shouted at Chu Luiyue angrily. Chu Luiyue, a life for a life. I, Zhong Yi, and the entire Xing Luo won't let you off. However, Chu Luiyue didn't even look at him. After Situ Xingxin's physical body exploded, she saw a blood-red ray of light quickly darting out. This person is actually planning to escape. Digression, there are 2 more updates later. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 460. That ball of red shot into the air and tore a hole in the deep Xian array. The red-tailed flood dragon let out an angry roar. But that ball of red pierced through its tail. Crush! The huge deep Xian array was completely broken. It turned into countless streaks of light and scattered in all directions. It looked like that thing was about to escape. Chu Luiyue's heart tightened. Just as she was about to chase after it, a silver sword suddenly pierced through the air. The sound of the sword was like thunder. When it entered her ears, it seemed to reach straight to her heart. Chu Luiyue seemed to have sensed something and looked up. She saw that the sword drew a bright arc in the air and quickly pierced toward that ball of red light. Clang! The sword pierced the ground and directly nailed that thing to death. Chu Luiyue's eyes flashed. A normal sword could not possibly nail a spirit body, especially one that was rather powerful. It was obvious that the pressure from the long sword was suppressing him. She was very familiar with the aura on it. She looked in the direction of the sword and instantly met a pair of deep eyes. Her heart suddenly felt like it had been hit by something soft. It was indeed him. However, this feeling did not last long because she immediately realized that the person standing beside Rong Xiu was Qi Han. These 2 people were actually together. Chu Luiyue's heart instantly skipped a few beats. Rong Xiu and Qi Han. What did they say? Did they know each other's identities? Rong Xiu was easy to deal with, but what about Qi Han? Rong Xiu was very resourceful. If he really wanted to know something, Chu Luiyue was full of doubts. The atmosphere between Rong Xiu and Qi Han became tense again. Why did you suddenly attack? Qi Han suddenly turned around and questioned in a deep voice. Just now, it was Rong Xiu who said that Her Highness could handle everything by herself. That was why he suppressed the worry in his heart and did not rush forward. But in the blink of an eye, Rong Xiu was caught off guard and attacked. Rong Xiu glanced at Qi Han and smiled faintly. Because this prince is her fiancé. So calm and collected. So self-righteous. Qi Han's eyes widened as he suddenly realized something. You did it on purpose? In that case, Rong Xiu naturally became the first person to help His Highness. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. This prince is only thinking for you. His tone was light as if he didn't think of anything else. Qi Han did not speak for a long time. Rong Xiu's words made sense. Now that Her Highness had not yet returned to the Tianling dynasty, if Her Highness's plan failed because of him, then he could only apologize with his death. But Rong Xiu was obviously selfish. There won't be a next time. Qi Han said coldly. Rong Xiu's eyebrows moved slightly, and his smile deepened. Is my fiancé, so this is what I should do. Qi Han clenched his fists. If he didn't know that Her Highness really liked Prince Li, he would definitely have attacked by now. He really didn't know what Her Highness saw in him. Seeing that Qi Han and Rong Xiu seemed to be talking about something, Chu Luiyue was even more curious. However, she was quite a distance away from them, so she couldn't hear anything at all. She made up her mind to clean up the mess here as soon as possible and then find the two of them to clarify things. Thinking of this, she walked to the side of the long sword and surrounded the soul with flames. A cry of agony could be heard instantly. Chu Luiyue glanced at the small fireball and was surprised to find that the person's aura was rapidly weakening. The hellfire of the heavenly square cauldron can burn everything in the world, especially this soul. The legendary three-eyed eagle's voice suddenly echoed in her heart. As long as it is condensed in the heavenly square cauldron, it will disappear completely very soon. Chu Luiyue widened her eyes slightly. Really? Then aren't you also? The legendary three-eyed eagle's physical body was destroyed, and now only a soul was left. However, it had also stayed in here for thousands of years, hadn't it? How can such a lowly person be compared to my race? The legendary three-eyed eagle's voice was filled with undisguised pride. Chu Luiyue thought that it made sense. After all, the legendary three-eyed eagle was a divine beast, so ordinary cultivators naturally couldn't compare. Although this cultivator seemed to have some background, you want his power? From the scream just now, she could already tell that this seemed to be a middle-aged man. The legendary three-eyed eagle was silent for a moment before finally admitting. That's right. The power in his soul can help me recover my cultivation. Chu Luiyue chuckled lightly. He was quite honest. Ever since she discussed with the legendary three-eyed eagle to help it last time, the relationship between them was not as tense as before. In her opinion, it was a good thing. With a thought, she called the fireball back into her body and threw the soul into the heavenly square cauldron. The moment that scarlet ball appeared, endless transparent karmic fires surged up. It completely drowned it. The cries of pain became even more mournful, but they soon became weaker. Chu Luiyue said in her heart, let's keep him alive first. She might be able to get something out of him later. Whether it was the bronze cauldron, the sheepskin scroll, or his reaction when he saw the dagger that Rong Xiu gave her. Chu Luiyue pulled out the long sword. Suddenly, her shoulders sank. It was Tuan Zi who rushed over. Chu Luiyue smiled and patted its head. From the corner of her eye, she saw that Xue was still hesitating on the spot. Its eyes would occasionally drift to the long sword in her hand. Xue, thank you for today. Chu Luiyue roughly knew what it was thinking, so she couldn't help but smile and walk over. Xue then leaned in front of her. Its gaze swept across her wrist, and it revealed a tinge of heartache as it went closer and gently licked it. Chu Luiyue's heart warmed up. It's just a flesh wound. I'll be fine after some rest. Hong Long. A sudden clap of thunder came from the dark clouds. In the direction of Qinghe Hall, a figure shot up to the sky. Chu Luiyue focused her gaze and was instantly stunned. That person is actually Emperor Jianghu. The key is that he seems to be breaking through to peak stage 6. Digression: mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 461. Vigorous origin power surged around his body, and the seal above his head had almost completely disappeared. Chu Luiyue previously knew that Emperor Jianghu wasn't weak, but he didn't expect him to be this strong. The current him has actually reached the peak of stage 6. But he hasn't stopped. A ridiculous guess suddenly surfaced in Chu Luiyue's mind. If the seal completely disappears and Emperor Jianghu's abilities break through again, as if to prove my guess, the surrounding heaven and earth force crazily surged into Emperor Jianghu's body as the last stroke on the seal gradually disappeared. The aura on his body was still constantly strengthening. If Chu Luiyue was already like this, what about the other people who didn't know anything? When Emperor Jianghu's figure appeared in midair and revealed his true cultivation level, almost everyone was stunned. That's His Majesty? It really is His Majesty. Wasn't he escorted to Jianghu Hall previously? Why is he, stage 6 warrior? His Majesty is actually a stage 6 warrior? The crowd discussed fervently, and the last sentence finally woke them up. The few family heads standing at one side exchanged glances and fell into an eerie silence. This happened too suddenly, and it was too horrifying. Everyone in country Yaochen knew that Emperor Jianghu's cultivation talent could barely be considered not bad. Compared to a real genius, it wasn't worth mentioning. In addition to the many years of living like a prince, one didn't need to think to know that Emperor Jianghu's combat skills were very weak. Even just a moment ago, the patriarchs were thinking the same thing. If not, Emperor Jianghu wouldn't have lost so quickly when Rongjio barged in, and he wouldn't have been in such a pathetic state. But now, it seemed like the rich strength and formidable suppression clearly came from Emperor Jianghu's body. This meant that he was different from Situ Xingchen, who kept absorbing strength to break through. He was clearly hiding his true strength. But now, he was finally able to display his true strength. Someone suddenly asked, "What's the third prince's matter? Where's the third prince?" The crowd was suddenly jolted awake. Rongjio just went to find Emperor Jianghu. Who would have thought that things would take a 180-degree turn in such a short period of time? Rongjio was clearly at a disadvantage now. Even if he had outstanding battle achievements, he was definitely not a match for a rank 6 warrior. In actual fact, Rongjio was in a better state than the crowd had imagined, as he was only slightly injured. When he arrived outside Jianghu Hall, he coincidentally saw Emperor Jianghu cultivating. Just as he was about to enter, Emperor Jianghu rushed up to the sky and didn't even care about him. That minor injury was only caused by the shock waves of energy. However, the shock in his heart was 10,000 times heavier than that. He looked up at Emperor Jianghu, whose abilities kept increasing, and tightly knitted his brows as many emotions flashed across his eyes. Shock, doubt, disbelief. After a while, he suddenly laughed. Wei Lin, who was following closely behind, immediately asked, "Your Highness, are you all right?" Rongjio shook his head and laughed even louder, but there was no smile in his eyes. So this was his imperial father. It turned out that what he had seen all these years was just an illusion. He thought that he knew a lot about his father, but in the end, he realized that he knew nothing at all. That man had become a completely different person. No, or rather, he was originally like that. After Emperor Jianghu appeared, the red-tailed flood dragon seemed to become even more anxious and uneasy. It seemed like it wanted to go forward, but it was always hesitant as it looked at Emperor Jianghu with a complicated gaze. Chu Luiyue glanced at it, patted Shui, and softly asked, "Why? Why do I feel that the red-tailed flood dragon seems to hate Emperor Jianghu? But at the same time, it's a little fearful?" Shui rubbed its head against Chu Luiyue's palm and softly whimpered to express its affirmation. Dumpling nodded even more crazily. "It's so obvious. The red-tailed flood dragon clearly wants to get rid of Emperor Jianghu completely. But for some reason, it didn't do anything." Chu Luiyue was even more confused. This deep Xian formation is country Yao Chen's palace's defensive formation, and the red-tailed flood dragon is suppressed under it. Logically speaking, it should be on the same side as country Yao Chen's royal family. Where did this inexplicable disgust and hatred come from? It can't be because it supported Rong Jiao's ascension. That has nothing to do with it. At this point, the seal above Emperor Jiawen's head completely disappeared. Emperor Jiawen's violent aura surged. Dark clouds gathered, and thunder rumbled. The wind howled. This is the sign of a breakthrough. Chu Luiwei held his breath. Emperor Jiawen is actually going to directly break through and become a stage 7 warrior? Long. Following this loud sound, a silver ray of light suddenly descended from the sky. The dark sky was much brighter because of this ray of light. Then a second ray of light and a third ray of light appeared. It was as if there was a silver waterfall falling from the clouds. A gigantic canopy emitted a dazzling light. A vast suppression descended. Some people couldn't take it anymore and knelt down as they watched this scene agitatedly. Chu Luiwei slowly clenched his fists, and he almost couldn't believe what was happening in front of him. Emperor Jiawen actually summoned Heaven's Canopy. This is the sign that he's about to break through and become a stage 7 warrior. But looking at Emperor Jiawen's expression, he didn't seem surprised at all. It was as if he had long expected all of this. Under countless gazes, Emperor Jiawen slowly raised his hand and reached for Heaven's Canopy. Hold on. A low and lazy voice suddenly sounded. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 462. Emperor Jiawen suddenly paused in his actions, and he abruptly turned around. A tall figure appeared in front of the crowd. He slowly walked over with a casual smile on his devilish face. His eyes were as deep and pure as the night sky, and he was surrounded by an indescribable aura as if he didn't belong to this world. It was Rong Xiao. Chu Luiwei widened her eyes slightly. This was because the aura on Rong Xiao's body became stronger with every step he took. Upon seeing this scene, the crowd gasped in shock. That's Prince Li? Isn't Prince Li weak and sick all year round? Now he actually broke through to become a stage 3 warrior? No. He's a stage 4 warrior now. In the face of this sudden change, almost everyone was stunned on the spot. But Chu Luiwei's heart skipped a beat. Is Rong Xiao planning to show his true abilities? Why? Emperor Jiawen stared closely at Rong Xiao, and his face changed a few times. You're not sick. But Rong Xiao didn't immediately answer his question. Instead, he walked straight to Chu Luiwei and stood still. He looked down, held her hand, and gently slid his fingers across her broken wrist. A warm and strong force instantly entered her body. Your Highness, actually, you don't have to worry about. Chu Luiwei originally wanted to say that he didn't have to worry about this injury since she was a celestial physician herself. She had already treated it briefly before, and it would heal on its own after some time. But when she met Rong Xiao's deep and gentle gaze, her heart warmed, and she swallowed her words. Sorry I'm late. Chu Luiwei lightly shook her head. Qi Han, who was hiding in the dark, looked even colder. Leave the rest to me. Upon hearing Rong Xiao's words, Chu Luiwei felt a little uneasy. What are you planning to do? He had painstakingly hidden it for so many years, so why did he have to reveal it all today? Rong Xiao's thin lips curved slightly. I'm just putting an end to it. Chu Luiwei's heart tingled as he instinctively looked up at Emperor Jiawen, who was in midair. A moment later, she gently held his hand. All right. While the two of them were talking, Rong Xiao's aura had already broken through to a stage 5 warrior. After confirming that Chu Luiwei was fine, Rong Xiao turned around to look at Emperor Jiawen. At this point, if Emperor Jiawen still couldn't tell what was going on, he would have wasted his many years on the throne. Rong Xiao, you were lying to me all this time? Not only was he not sick, but his cultivation was also extremely outstanding. Otherwise, he definitely wouldn't have reached this level at his current age. Rong Xiao did not seem to have stopped. He was about to break through the middle stage of the 5th stage. Rong Xiu smiled lightly. I'm just learning from you, father. Haven't you been like this for so many years? Emperor Jiawen was dazed. Then he suddenly realized something as shock flashed across his eyes. Why, you already knew? Rong Xiu smiled and didn't say anything, clearly admitting to it. Emperor Jiawen was instantly flustered, and his aura was messy. Even the heavens canopy in front of him became a little illusory. Since when? What else do you know? Emperor Jiawen's face had a rare look of panic and nervousness. Chu Luiyue squinted his eyes. She had never seen such an expression on Emperor Jiawen's face before. It was as if a secret that had been hidden for many years had suddenly been discovered. It was reasonable for him to be shocked. When the surrounding people saw the current Rong Xiu, they also had the same reaction. But where did this nervousness and panic come from? Mother has already passed away for many years. Father, you really don't have to be so worried. Rong Xiu's tone was calm as if he were talking about someone else's matters. Emperor Jiawen felt as if he was struck by lightning. Rong Xiu must have known everything. The anger from being lied to previously suddenly disappeared, and guilt and hatred rapidly surged in Emperor Jiawen's heart. Rong Xiu, what happened back then wasn't what you think it was. I had my reasons back then. It seemed like he wanted to explain himself. However, Rong Xiu wasn't interested in listening. He still smiled gently and lazily, but his eyes seemed to be frozen with a thick layer of ice. The past is the past. If you say this now, Mother won't be able to hear it. As for me, I'm just here today to fulfill Mother's last wish. As he spoke, his cold gaze landed on the item hanging around Emperor Jiawen's neck, and he smiled meaningfully. You still used this item in the end, didn't you? Emperor Jiawen's face quickly darkened. He seemed to have instantly aged by more than 10 years. No, I was forced to. He clenched his fists, and his face was filled with conflict and pain. First, it was the Empress, then it was Rong Jiu. Everyone is betraying me. If I don't retaliate, I'll be completely trapped in this palace. My years of hard work will go to waste. How can I accept this? If these people didn't force me to this step, why would I do this? Slight mockery flashed across Rong Xiu's face. Some people are always the best at finding excuses for themselves. Emperor Jiawen suddenly thought of something and hurriedly asked, What did you just say? You just said that you want to help her fulfill her last wish. What is it? If I can help, I'll definitely do my best. Father, are you serious? Rong Xiu raised his brows as if he were wavering. Emperor Jiawen harshly nodded. I'm the one who let her down. I can make it up to her. Mother said that she doesn't want to see you step into heaven's canopy, especially with her power. Rong Xiu's gaze was cold as he said every word clearly. She wants you to stay here forever, and you can't leave even if you die. Translator, Atlas Studios editor, Atlas Studios mobile users, please browse and read. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.